A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
As the tension within the Australian democracy seems to be heightening and building up, there is one party in Australia that is still unashamedly Christian. They are called the Australian Christians Party, and their leader, Maryka Groenewald, is going to join us today to talk about an upcoming church and state summit being held in Perth, WA, next weekend. Maryka, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Maryka, not only in Australia, but across the world, it just seems like the heat has turned up in the political space, doesn't it? That all the major parties and even the minority parties are just so opposed to each other on so many different levels.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the culture of politics at the moment. It's so used to feeding into this divisive nature of it, but I love with AC, we're always like, okay, what are the things that we can speak positively into? What are the things that we can bring a point of difference into? So instead of feeding into the noise and perhaps causing further division, we can actually bring, just a bit of a different conversation and a different way of thinking about things, and I think that's really needed at the moment.
Well, it certainly is. The AC obviously being led and inspired by the JC, bringing the big P, which is peace, to the world.
I love that.
Because, we're laughing about it, but I mean, you've got to look at the Trump situation, the hate has escalated to the point that some kid thinks in his delusional brain that if he shoots another human being, that he'll somehow become a hero and he'll make America and the world a better place. It's pretty ugly stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, but again, I always say to people, it comes back to what your intrinsic understanding and relationship is with Jesus. Like, if you don't know that Jesus transforms everything about you, your heart, your mind, everything, that flows into every area. So political will alone is never going to have a long-term change in a nation. It's impossible. People need to first and foremost know, who is this Jesus character we're talking about, and why does a relationship with him change everything about us? So until, even as Christians, we've reached that point to prioritize and go, hang on, we need to talk to people about the good news of the gospel. We need to model that through how we think, how we speak, even politics. It's just going to be surface level change.
Absolutely. I mean, that's good preaching right there, Maryka, but you're a politician. And so how do you translate Christian teaching into politics? Because this is a really interesting question for our listeners.
Look, for me, I've always laid down, even with Australian Christians, early days, I always knew that God would be at the helm of everything I do. And I said, Lord, let your will be done. It's great to have the prospect of getting elected. I mean, all those things are great, but that's not why we do what we do. And it's literally to proclaim Christ in politics. And if that is all we need to do, if that is all God called us to do, that is honestly what we'll continue to do. So for me, I'd like to say I'm a kingdom independent. It's not about the politics. It's about what are we doing to proclaim Christ in politics, to put his name forward in thinking and policy and laws. That to me is really crucial. And of course, a massive point of difference between, us and perhaps some of the other parties.
Yeah, and if someone was to say to you today, okay, so what are your three biggest policies that you're most passionate about at the AC? What would you say? What are your three big policies that you guys are just really keen to get across the line?
Yeah, well, I'd probably like to sneak in 4, but of course we've got our 4 main pillars, always have, that it's around life, faith, families and freedom. So we know that those 4 pillars of policy and laws, they are the things that very few parties like to touch, especially the life issue when it comes to freedom. So that would absolutely be our biggest point of difference, and pretty much the things that we talk about, not just during an election, but we're absolutely advocating, talking about them, supporting organisations in that space that talk about it, and of course doing the work. So those 4 things to me is kind of like our bread and butter, and so they should be.
Well, I resonate with all of them. So life, faith, family, and and freedom. How good is that? Yeah. And that resonates with a broader audience. You don't need to be a Christian to want to live in a country that really enshrines and promotes life, faith, family and freedom. So I really like that. So let me ask you, there's a church and state summit coming up in the city of Perth next weekend. Tell us why you were so excited about that summit, besides the fact that you're one of the speakers.
Yeah, look, that aside, I mean, I've been great friends with Dave Pello over the years and have great admiration for what he does. And, you know, a couple of years ago, he said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to bring this to Perth? So last year was our inaugural church and state in Perth. Fantastic turnout. And again, it just which goes to show that people really are hungry for information and knowledge, and not just around politics, but, you know, what does God say about the relationship between Christians and politics, and how can we as believers practically be salt and light, as Dave often says, you know, which flavours and light which shines in the public square. So church and state is this fantastic way to bring together topics and people, politicians, non-politicians, pastors, to actually then debate and talk about these issues. And of course, bringing it to Perth and helping people understand that relationship and why it's important for Christians to be in politics is so crucial, because, you know, we're a year out from a state election less. So it's a good time to have it, that's for sure.
Yeah, and what's the traction been like? Have you had much uptake from the people of Perth once you started advertising?
It was phenomenal. We had a bit of a different setup last year. We had a worship night on the Friday, a bit of a message. I mean, we probably had over, 300 people there. So this year it's looking a little bit different because we've had to change tact with venues, but regardless, still hoping, to get, decent amount of people there, but tickets are a bit more limited. So I would encourage people to jump on that. But same deal this year. Speakers sharing, their heart on key issues. It's not about party loyalty or anything like that. This is literally Christians talking about how we can faithfully steward our political freedom as part of what we do every 3 and 4 years, and that's through our votes.
Yeah, and I have heard that the people of WA and especially the Christians are a little bit more civilised and balanced than some of your eastern state neighbours. So did you find, because let's be honest, you get a bunch of Christians together from different churches and you're trying to get some sense of singleness of purpose or unity. It can be like herding cats. But was there a feeling last year that everyone was on the same page and excited about the same things?
Yeah, look, and I think different years you'll have different topics as well. So, of course, last year we had speakers on the back of, dissecting COVID and sort of thinking through that. And, of course, this year you're sort of more looking forward, as Dave said, it's about reformation. So, briefly, what I touched on earlier about what that looks like, we can talk about political will, we can talk about changing legislation, but what does that look like in a broader context? So, the unity for me in WA is such a special thing we have here, because I think everybody understands, look, we've got these foundational things that we agree with. We've got things that we want to work towards for the betterment of our state. So there really is, there's an incredible relationship with, the organisations and how we work here. But I guess this understanding that is around how do we change a state or a nation long term. And we all need to be able to be out there, firstly, and equipped with speaking on key issues, being able to encourage not only non-Christians, but even within the body of Christ. How do we actually encourage each other through that as well? So all of that over the years has built a really beautiful unity, I feel, that we have in WA. But, we've really had to work hard at that and foster that. So hopefully that'll continue.
Well, yeah, I think the theme for this year is reformation, as you said, and every Christian really should want reformation. I mean, we all know that something has to change in Australia. We need a move of God, or the kingdom to come, or revival, whatever terminology or words people want to use. I think we're all really looking for the same thing. And Jesus initiated this when he taught us to pray, your will be done on earth and your kingdom to come. That's really our desire, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And, for us to also realise in politics, it's easy to build our own idea. It's easy to build our own thing. But it's like, hey, what is God's greater purpose in everything we're doing? You know, it needs to be able to point people to God and point people to his word, you know, not just based on our opinions and our feelings and growing a following. I mean, again, when you break it down, it's about people at the end of the day, and how do we love and serve people? And I just think, gosh, what a tremendous opportunity, right? If you've got a parliament full of people that are not only Christian in word and deed, but, you know, you've got people that are in there praying and completely having this revelation of what reformation in hearts and minds mean, that can honestly change a whole state, change a whole nation. So that's the really exciting part for me. I think about the fact that I'm going, God, like when we're lifting our state, when we're lifting our nation in prayer, when we're speaking about serving and loving, you know, the antithesis of what we're hearing at the moment, that can only be a good thing, right?
Well, it is a good thing, Maryka, and I really hope and pray you get elected next year. Tell us your dream scenario. So, you know, there's a state election in WA next year, as you said. Tell us your dream scenario, not only for you personally, but then the next steps after that.
Look, I've always said for AC, it's to build a really solid foundation and blueprint in a state that we can then duplicate. So, you know, different people have different ways in how they grow parties and establish parties, but we always knew that we wanted to make sure that our foundation of the party, the people, the leadership is really solid, and then we duplicate it across. But for me, it's always been, of course, the politics, but the prayer ministry that runs alongside of AC. So I just see, and I've on many occasions had these dreams about, you know, what that reformation in speaking the political, praying, what that actually does and means, of course, when you're in Parliament. So I look forward to that. I look forward to even how that witnesses to people and other Christians so that they actually believe and understand, oh my goodness, you know, this is possible. You know, it's possible to elect good Christians to Parliament, and it's possible to support people who have that as an unashamed platform. So for me, the next couple of years, I'm really excited about weaving together the political, the prayer, the churches, continuing to build on that unity. Oh man, that is what I see. That especially for WA, and then, you know, praying that we can duplicate that, you know, again, God willing, into other states where the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, but that would mean for that foundation to be solid is that you get elected to the Senate next year, correct?
Yeah, but, you know, it's not just me. And this is the cool thing, Andrew. You know, we've got a good board of people. I mean, we've had people working in AC for 30 years building this. You know, AC was birthed out of a prayer meeting in someone's kitchen. So I just think even the way AC started and the heart of how it started has always been so genuine. And not saying that, you know, other people and parties haven't, but for me it's the exciting part to go, hey, this has always been birthed in prayer, it will continue in prayer, and it will continue to build in prayer as we hopefully, you know, get several members elected.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I would like to ask all of our listeners to pray for the Australian Christians. It is, to my knowledge, one of the only remaining Christian parties in Australia, overtly Christian parties. And I think we need to pray for the Australian Christians. I think we need to pray for you, Maryka, that you do get elected to the Senate next year, and that others do as well. And as you said, you can replicate this party across every state in Australia, because we definitely need some genuine Christian voices in the political space in Australia.
Yeah, for sure. Look, prayer is powerful, and I've often said to people, you know, we have so many supporters, and their only involvement is to pray with their pastors, pray for our suburbs, pray for our leaders. And hey, if that is our function and we're able to mobilise, you know, hundreds of churches to do that, that would be an incredible way to have spent all this time and effort as well.
Absolutely. Now, if people want to come to the Church and State Summit or register for it, what's the best website they can use to register for this summit?
Yes, so the best page to go to is churchandstate.com.au/Perth. And I know different people and organisations have sent out the emails, but even just Google, you know, Church and State Perth, there'll be ticket registrations on there as well. And they can pop in AC20 for discount on their tickets.
There you go, AC24 for a discount on the Church and State Summit, and that Saturday date is what?
Yes, we're having it on Saturday, 10th of August.
So it's the 10th of August in Perth, WA, the second one in Perth. Maryka Groenewald, I want to thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to getting an update from you after the summit as well.
Absolutely. Look forward to it, Andrew.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.